David, what's going on today? What's happening in the world? Let me get the date right. Today is Thursday, December 11th, and last I saw, silver is above $63, and gold was what was gold at 4,200, I think. And yeah, everything other than that, everything's just calm, right, in the world.
Well, silver does what silver does. I mean, it can very much bore you to tears, and it can also launch and take off like a rocket ship. And that's sort of where we're at right now, Michael. And trend in motion continues till it actually stops. Not that profound a statement, but a lot of people are trying to top pick, double top, triple top. Extension off the base to this level, whatever. But these kind of markets are really tough to, not only pick a top, but to be on the wrong side of. Obviously, I'm long and have been for, basically forever. But the it'd be very interesting to get uh, more information or to get, which good quite a bit, but I'd say maybe more verifiable information as far as just how tight is the commercial bar market and how much is really needed in certain locations and has that been fulfilled or not.
I don't know if I asked you this last time, but in all your years you've been covering this and talking about it, can you believe where we're at today? Where things are? This episode is brought to you by Vaulted, launched by McIlvaney Financial Group. The simplest and most affordable way to own physical gold and silver. Physical gold is the only asset outside of the control of the government and banking system. They can print dollars, but they can't print gold. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike.
I'll give you a funny answer, yes and no. I mean, first of all, I said back in like 2003, excuse me, I said back in 2003 in my book, Get the Skinny on Silver Investing, my first little primer book, that I saw $100 silver in this, secular bull market. And so that, so I already put it in print. So does this surprise me? As far as this move from 35 onward, it has surprised me. I didn't expect it to. So it adhered to what I thought of. So this is the no part. I said it would move past 35 and stall out around 50. Probably trade under 50 for a bit, not, a year, but for some, weeks, 2 weeks, maybe a couple months. It will break through 50. And once it breaks through 50 this last time, that could be the floor. And we don't know how high is high. So that's basically verbatim what I said at that time frame.
How long ago was that,
Now,
David? How long ago was that you said that?
oh, geez, you'd have to look at the charts. But when it hit 35 and got, up past into the 40s print, but, 6 months probably. I mean, we've gone up 100% in a year, Michael. So I'll just wag it a wild ass guess. It was 6 months ago. I mean, not that long ago. But once it got past 50, it started getting into 50 handles. It got to 60 faster than I expected. And here we are, 63, 63 as we're doing the interview. I do think we'll get some, significant pullbacks that will be probably short-lived and scare people out, especially if they're on leverage. But there's no question in anybody's mind that we are in a very big bull market. Where I differ with a lot of my peer group is that they say it's just starting. I say it's just starting for the final leg. And the final leg is where it makes the biggest gains in the shortest amount of time. And that's being proven correct so far. And this is where you can make the most money. This is kind of, I don't even like to say it, Michael, but this is kind of where you can get rich quick kind of a thing. I mean, think of somebody that did the 35 breakout. I didn't do a futures position. I was thinking about it once it broke out at 35. But regardless, there's somebody out there that did is maybe still holding. So if you're leveraged at 35 and you got in right, and you're still holding or whatever, I mean, That's a lot. Not that I advocate futures trading for anyone, but nonetheless, there are people that do it well. And just very, very pleased. I just don't want it to stay parabolic for too long, because if it keeps going this strongly and this quickly, then we might see a situation where the market does pull back and it stabilizes. There's many people that think we could go straight up to 100, nothing will happen or thereabouts. Perhaps that's true. Without knowing the exact facts, it's very difficult to project, how much physical demand is required to satisfy the longs that are taking delivery. If we knew that, and we knew the number was, I don't know, 50 million, 60, 70 million ounces, yeah, I would probably be we're getting to 80 this year camp. But I don't know the number. There's stuff out on the internet, and most from sources I pretty much trust. But as far as being able to verify some of this stuff, I have been unable to, which doesn't make it right or wrong, but being the conservative mindset that I am, don't tell me, show me. I want to see it. And I've been unable to determine some of this stuff.
Well, and also, how much silver is out there on paper versus actual physical? I mean, I feel like when I hear that, I listened to your interview with Michelle McCory, and when I hear that, I think about you're selling shares, you're selling over 100, already 100% of shares are gone, and you're selling more of them,
Yeah.
and that's where we're at.
Yeah. Well, on that theme, that the market, I'll just call it the market. So we're talking about the silver market, which is a derivatives market. So the professionals have a certain amount of short positions that they continually hold. It ebbs and flows, and they sell some, buy some back, sell some, buy some back. But basically, there's this amount of shorts continually, and it moves up and down based on the price. Well, they roll over. What roll over means that when the end of the delivery month comes due, they continue to hold their short position by closing out that spot month and rolling into the next delivery month, which is like from December into March. And they almost roll over like 100% of their shorts. This time they cut it in a third to almost a half, which means very clearly the market tells you a lot if you listen to it, that whomever, and it's not one, but basically the big bullion banks primarily, do not want as much exposure to the short side as they had previously, which is a very big tell. They're worried. The amount of paper that's against the amount of physical silver on a ratio basis is higher than any other commodity. There's a chart that Ed Steer puts out. I refer to it from time to time from my friend Nick Lear that runs Gold Charts RS. And it shows how much leverage there is in the futures markets on a bunch of different commodities. And silver is head and shoulders above any other. In other words, you've got to create a lot of paper to keep the price managed versus how much there is in the gold market, platinum market, the oil market, or what have you.
Why are they worried?
Well, they'd be worried because they're losing money. If they're short at 55 and we're printing 63 and they haven't covered their short yet, somebody at that trading desk is going to say, WTF, when you get now this position, or how are you going to? Oh, well, boss, we always do what we always do. We're going to, delta hedge, get into the options runoff. We're going to move as much options trading as we need to make sure the market closes under this price, and we'll have a winning trade. Well, those type of things aren't really working very well. Anytime someone that comes in and tries their normal activity, someone on the other side, you go ahead and blast it the other direction. And we haven't seen that kind of activity consistently, probably since the Hunt brothers. I mean, we saw some of it in 2011 on that run up where we got to about 48. We saw some of that taking place, but this one just feels different, especially you've got let's say the Asian contagion. I mean, this guy, Eric Young, who's very involved, seems very clued in to the Hong Kong and China market, provides some insights that we haven't had before. We know China is coming into Peru and buying doré straight up. We know that there's a change in the 401k market. People can buy commodities. I think it's February 1st. You might know the exact date. So how much money is going to move out of stocks and bonds into precious metals when that activity takes place? We know silver is now listed as a critical mineral. And so what happens? Does the U.S. build a strategic stockpile? Well, I would say yes, they will. How much? I don't know. And how fast? I don't know. But the last one was 140 million ounces. So say they need 100 million ounces. Well, that's 10% of of the annual supply. It's only 1 billion ounces of silver. So if someone's going to buy it for a 401k, someone's going to buy it for the strategic stockpile. China is buying it much more than in the past. And then you've got, the big boys, the kingdom, which is the bond kings, looking at the treasury market as being something they really don't want to be involved with, other than maybe short-term profit taking. Long-term, they know they're going to get killed. And the yen trade unwinding. I mean, you have so many factors that are producing a synergy into why the metals. And, I look at, $63 and I say, well, my average price is much lower than that. And, would I take something off the table? And part of me says, yeah, maybe. But the other part of me says, where do I put it? If I take some silver profits here, I don't want to go to the stock market. Certainly don't want to go to the bond market. The housing market in my area is still overpriced as far as I'm concerned. So where am I going to go? I'm going to go back into the metals. So I may as well just hold, for the ride, because the ride is far from over. But as my friends say, we've got another decade or so. Fundamentally, I think we do. But I don't think we do monetarily, meaning that I think the whole system is going to be reset in the not too distant future, one way or another.
I was kind of smirking because I was gonna throw out Bitcoin just to get your reaction to that, to see what your thoughts were gonna be on that.
Well, I did a whole series on it. I mean, basically, I'm free market. You love Bitcoin, go for it. I being libertarian minded for the most part, when the white paper came out, I thought, wow, this is really sounds pretty good. I chose not to get involved for one reason or another, but now it's kind of the opposite of how it started. And because of that fact and the fact that the banks have taken it over. I mean, I wrote a paper that you can still find. It's called My 2 Bits About Bitcoin. I think I wrote it in 2016 about my thoughts about Bitcoin. And in that missive, which is pretty involved, I said, the mighty powers aren't going to let this go on its own. If it becomes very popular and significant, watch out, the bankers will take it over. That's paraphrasing, but it's certainly what I was implying. So they'll kick it out or they'll take it over. And that's what's happened. So I don't think that Bitcoin has the ability to double from here at the roughly 100,000 mark to 200,000 as easily as silver doubled from 30-ish to 60. I mean, silver doubled this year. Bitcoin certainly did.
Yeah, it's where I've always, and people have labeled me as a cynic, but mainstream people, they're just not going to allow it. They're not going to let regular people, control this.
Have an anonymous peer-to-peer payment system. Sorry to interrupt, but they're not. You're right.
And I'm not, I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert on anything, but one thing I know in my experience, and I've used this analogy, and I don't know where I heard it from, so maybe I just made it up in my own head, but I was talking about, and people are going to come at me when I'm going to bring this up again, but I'll share it with you and you tell me what you think. I was using the reference of Napster. You remember Napster. Young people don't remember Napster. I've talked to Bitcoin young people that are like passionate about Bitcoin. I love the passion in them because, they love Bitcoin.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
But I bring up the Napster, they don't remember that because that was over 20 years ago. And if you remember the MTV was Music Awards or whatever, the guy, Napster founder, came out with a Metallica shirt on. And Metallica was in the audience and they were pissed off because, they were suing him.
Right.
shut the whole thing down. But it started it from that point on, music was never the same. But it was sharing. You could share. I used to use Line. You could use LimeWire to share music and download it and burn it to CDs. And when the new first iPods came out, but eventually they took it over. Spotify, Apple Music, and Napster's gone. LimeWire's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, that could certainly be the case here. I mean, the governments, I forget the number, like 190 governments in the world. I forget the exact number, and like 160 are making CBDCs. I mean, it's very clear what direction they want to go, and that goes to taking over. Well, we're going to use the Bitcoin protocol, except it's going to be proof of stake, not energy used or whatever. I mean, I don't know the exact model that they want to use, although the Chinese beta test is well along and doing great, and that's sort of the test case for the rest of the world. That's basically the direction that the bankers want to go.
And then the idea of the CBDC, where people, they cringe when they hear it, but then I think to myself, well, the foundation's there because you do everything on your phone. I go to the airport. You know how many people I see that put their face right up against that recognition? I mean, everything you do is on your phone. So the idea of a CBDC, I think it's inevitable at this point.
I think it is. I think it's destiny. I don't like it. I want to resist it. Going back to what you said about the airport, I haven't done nearly as much travel as I have done in the past. I mean, I was shooting all over the place, doing primarily investment conferences, of course, other things, visiting mine sites. I was flying a lot. And I remember near the end of that episode, which lasted like 20 years, I was at an airport. I forget which one. It was very late, like 11:30 p.m. There's hardly anybody in the airport. I probably had the last flight out of that airport at that time. And I'm going through the line. There's no line. It's just the zigzag back and forth, and there were these posters up. And they said, "You are your ID." Well, I knew what they were talking about. Talking about your iris scan or your DNA or your blood sample or your fingerprint or whatever. You are your ID. And that was a few years back, and it struck me pretty deeply, Michael. Like, you know what? This Orwellian system that they've developed is just going to get tighter and tighter and tighter. The well overused analogy, boiling frog, but it happens kind of slowly, kind of comfortable. You don't really know. So, it's for our protection. A lot of people will buy into the propaganda. Well, I want to be safe. Well, you're going to give up a lot of freedom to be safe. And that's the direction. There's little doubt in my mind. And going back to face recognition, I've said this in other interviews. I'll just try to be brief. But basically, in China and a lot of their convenience stores, you have your phone. No one is in this convenience store, which is, I don't know what they have in China. I've been to China mainland once. I've been to Hong Kong many times. But anyway, you walk up to the door. It's a facial recognition. It lets you in because it knows who the hell you are. You go in there and you put your Coke and your potato chips if you're American. I'm not sure what the Chinese put on there, their noodles or whatever. And you use your phone and you pay for it. And you walk out. So there's no one in that quote unquote store. But, the door unlocks, you walk in, it locks behind you till you pay. And it's all done basically by high tech.
So you mentioned global monetary reset. So you feel we're in one right now. We are in it.
Oh yeah.
I've had Andy Schechtman on, Matt Smith, and all mention, and others have mentioned the same. How far along into this process do you think we are with the reset?
Well, I think the European Central Bank will have theirs up maybe next year. I'm almost certain by mid 2027. So we're probably a year, two away at the most, in my view, for something as large as or westernized as the euro, the digital euro. I think the U.S. may be one of the last big nation states to adopt it, but I'm not sure.
So with that, then, and this is I try to get my I talked to several people that I mentioned and others, and I'm just trying to understand this like a 5-year-old to like as a regular person says, all right, how is this going to impact me? Well, so my question is then in regards to precious metals. So like the government claiming silver is a rare earth mineral because they know that they have to start reindustrializing here in the United States. How is that? I'm trying to think how I'm going to say this. How is that going to and gold itself? That's the price keeps going up. What's going to happen to people's dollars in your view as we're going through this reset? People's bank accounts.
Well, they'll be digitized and maybe repriced. I mean, the system will go from the system we have now, and it'll probably go to an all digital system, which is pretty much there. But it'll be probably with a new identification system where you have to get a real ID in order to keep your bank account. And once that's established, then it'll be basically off your phone, which a lot of it is off your phone. I mean, I'm not a huge Starbucks fan, but I've got the app. I use it from time to time, especially like in the airports. But the kids, are used to using it all the time. I mean, I don't think my kids carry any cash at all. And it's been that way for a long time. So the new system will be in, and it probably won't ban cash right away, but then it will go away. And basically, you're at the mercy of the new system, and it'll probably be implemented with a UBI, Universal Basic Income, because the chasm between the ultra rich, the billionaire class, and everybody else just keeps getting wider and wider. The middle class has pretty much been wiped out, and that's worldwide for the most part. So that's what it'll be. It'll be something that we're already doing and accepting, modified somewhat to where all of a sudden, that water's boiling and it's too late to get out. You didn't even realize it was taking place.
Yeah, you mentioned UBI, and Trump's been talking about these tariffs, and that they're going to give money back from all the dollars they've collected with the tariffs and give it back to the people. And I've had people are like, "Oh, this is a good thing." I'm like, "No, it's not. It's not."
You want to be independent. I mean, you don't not want to be reliant on Big Brother. You don't want to be relying on Big Brother for almost anything. But we're so inundated from the time we go to the public school system, where we're basically institutionalized that to trust authority under all conditions. Big Brother knows best. Always ask Mother, may I, before you do anything, and on it goes. There's no real critical thinking taught. There's no logic taught, and there's no question authority taught. And those are all things that basically a free mind will do, but they're taught to basically obey and accept whatever comes from on high or the propaganda press. And and we do have a very herd instinct for the most part. Certainly there's outliers. There are lone wolves. I'm one of them. But for the most part, people want to be with the herd. And so if the herd believes that, UBI is a good thing, what's wrong with it? They'll accept it. And I'm neutral there. I don't want, the left to be upset with me because I'm pretty open-minded on both sides. I study both perspectives almost always. And there are people that are very much in need. I mean, what kind of breaks my heart, I'm a little off topic here, Michael, but these, working moms and maybe have a kid or two working 2 jobs and they still can't make ends meet. They got to go to the food bank. I mean, that's unacceptable to me. If you're able to do a decent job, you should be able to make enough quote unquote money or currency to be able to, have a somewhat of a decent living. But, as I said, the middle class is getting wiped out, and people that used to be in pretty good shape maybe got a 5% raise over the last couple of years, but they're going bankrupt because the grocery bills are 40 or 50% higher. They couldn't make the second car payment that was repossessed. I mean, these are real world things that are happening.
Yeah, it's how people are surviving today. I'm a single guy, but in terms of like kids, wife, kids, and just the cost to be alive, I don't know how they're doing it.
Well, it's yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at one of them. I'll tell you one that I look at as a pretty much street level, what's really going on, something to watch. And it's very obvious and very common sense, and that's the restaurants. And I go back a couple of years, and the restaurants are all full or pretty close to it. And I said, geez, this economy must be better than all my data shows, all that I read, learn, and understand, and know for a fact. Well, that's gone away. I mean, I don't know how many of these fast food restaurants are being shut down. I've read about it, I can't quote the numbers. And even in my own hometown here, there are so many places that are, drive-through types that would fill up around noon, with cars driving through or people walking in. They're not empty, but you might drive through at rush hour, and there's two cars, not 10 waiting in line. So it's hit the restaurants. So for me, that's a good signal that, as you just said, how are people making ends meet? The answer is a lot of them aren't.
I was talking to I don't know if you know Don Durrett
I
last
do.
week, and we both live in Phoenix, and we were talking about all the construction that's going on here right now. I mean, it's just insane what they're building, and I don't know if you've spent any time down here, but
My webmaster's in Phoenix, so I've been
oh,
there a
that's
few
right, yeah,
times.
yeah, that's right, because we were email exchange. Yeah, we're not far from each other actually,
Right.
but I don't know how they're continuing to build and build and build, and I'll share with you right now currently there's a Phoenix Cardinals 28,000 square foot practice facility they're getting ready to break ground on. Axon is building a new headquarters on 76 acres. It's going to be apartments, hotel, and new office. Republic is getting ready to open up their corporate office. Sprouts, which is a grocery chain, I don't know if they have those up by you, but it's more of a regional. They're building a new corporate headquarters. And then on top of all that, there's apartments and more houses everywhere down here. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, I was there in the past with my family. One of my stepsister's husbands was the defensive coordinator for Arizona State, probably around 20 years ago. Anyway, the point being is it was nice and warm and, good size. But, I've been down there as recently as like 3 months ago. I mean, it's so crowded. It reminds me of what happened in California. At one point it was like a little bit cumbersome, but, still enough elbow room to get around and not being too much of a traffic jam. But when I left 26 years ago, I mean, on rush hour, it was you roll 18 feet and stop, roll 18 feet and stop, roll 18 feet and stop till you got home. It was insane. And I don't know, your freeway system is huge and seems to be really well planned. So when I've been there driving, it seems to be able to move around somewhat. But to me, it's just overcrowded. I mean, it's just huge.
Well, and also, I just can't believe. I mean, how these projects continue to start. Because to your point, I mean, well, let me ask you: what do you see in the next 12 months in the United States from an economic standpoint? Things will be better, worse, and what level?
Well, first thing I think is that we're going to see a very big problem in the regional banks on commercial real estate because the piper has to be paid in 2026. So that's one. So a lot of the ability for the GDP to truly grow is dependent on construction. And if there's not, and you outlined a bunch of construction, so I'm not taking that away. I have to factor it in my thinking. But generally speaking, on aggregate, the whole United States, it's going to be declining. There's going to be defaults. So it's overcapacities, too much office buildings that are not being rented or cannot be filled because of, the work from home thing since the illness. So there's that. The other part is what's going on in the treasury market and the yen carry trade, which means that interest rates might want to go lower or forced lower by the Fed having the ability to set the federal funds rate, and they're lowering interest rates. But the market may have a different idea, and it's already proved that I don't care how much you set the discount window at. I don't care. I have to get this kind of a yield before I'll buy your piece of paper. And that's another one that will be, I won't say a one off, but a clear indicator that the powers that be have not lost control, but they're losing as much control or power as they have had previously. So I think you got a real estate issue commercially. I think you've got a yield problem across the board globally with the ability of the US dollar to maintain its position as being able to manipulate the cost of money. I think the market will take over what the price of money should be. And with all that said, a general decline in the amount of jobs being generated. I think the unemployment will continue to increase. And I don't think that this AI bubble will last a lot longer either. I think that there'll be some reality check probably by the middle part of next year as well.
It's you bring up the AI, and we were just talking about it briefly before we started. Was Disney? They're pumping $1 billion into OpenAI. I didn't get a chance to read the details on it yet, but this AI bubble. But now OpenAI just got $1 billion infusion, whatever those terms are.
Well, that's the top of the market. I mean, is that the exact top? I don't know. It could be. You get to that point of exuberance that, it can only go up and it's the latest thing and I've got to get in. And that's the story of how markets get to the very, very top. And then they start down and reality sets in. I mean, look at the tech wreck in 2000. You're probably old enough to remember that. And you saw that NASDAQ get so overextended. And once that tech wreck happened, it took a while for the NASDAQ to come back up to the previous high.
You think this will be worse?
That's a good question. I'd have to think about it a little longer. My gut says no. I don't think it will be worse. I think the fact that there's so much need for the semiconductor industry and quantum computing coming in on the back of AI, I think AI will distort down to, excuse me, Mike, sorry. I think that AI will distort, I won't say distort. I think AI will reach its equilibrium point, which is far less than it's purportedly done to this point in time. And not necessarily simultaneously, but nearly at the same time, the growth in quantum computing will continue. And that will become the next big thing. So you'll be looking at AI being a good thing, a good tool. It's used, is considered a need, but it will pale in comparison to what the quantum computing industry will be able to bring. And I think that's the next phase of the, you want to call it, technological revolution.
Well, on top of it too, with the job losses, yeah, which you wonder. Yeah, I've had Melody Wright on. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she's been on my show a bunch of times, and she had an interesting theory of the AI, the overhype of it currently, just to hide how bad the job market really is. And I'm looking at it more and more. I'm tending to agree with that. But also,
Well, really, I mean, my job could probably be taken over by AI. I mean, I've been in the financial newsletter industry and I love what I do. I'm very passionate about it. I still have people that go out and do research and walk the mining properties and report on them and, the macro picture, economic, all that stuff. But, outside of walking a project, a property, or a mine, AI could, with the right prompts, probably come up and give you, some pretty good stock picks, maybe even paint a pretty accurate picture on a macro economy, and all that stuff that, we do here. I mean, my staff's only 5. It's not like we're 50 people. I could actually probably let one go if I wanted to, because I could probably AI it if I wanted to, but I don't. I want real people on the ground. But no, and that's just a single case. I mean, that, financial writing industry, and it didn't have to be just the newsletter business. It could be, the Wall Street Journal. It could be a lot of things that could be done. And some of that's being accomplished, by the way, as we both know. I mean, how many AI programs are out there on YouTube? I mean, there's one that uses my voice and my likeness, and it's posting way more than I post. And some of my followers said, wow, I've never seen you post so much. I said, that's not me. That's AI. It looks like me and it sounds like me, but it is not me. And it's saying stuff that I wouldn't say. So people that trust me and know me look at that, and if they don't know how to detect that it's artificial intelligence and not truly me, might be misled into what this whomever is doing it is putting out, and purportedly, it's Mr. Morgan when it's not.
What, is this on YouTube?
Yeah.
Did you get it taken down, or is it still up there?
Well, we're in. We haven't started a lawsuit or anything, but
No, but you
we
get the
have
channel pulled.
contacted YouTube and said, "Look, this is a copyright infringement, and what are you going to do about it?" And so far, we haven't really got a good response.
Well, the other thing with AI too is people will get so dependent on it because it'll make it because people are lazy, but you
Yeah.
can't call bullshit on some of this stuff.
Well, I've used it. I've tried it out, and I was getting a few things. I don't know, 3 months ago, and I really forget the prompt I gave it was, but it kept giving me wrong quotes on gold and silver. So I got kind of angry. This thing isn't worth a darn. And so I told it, I want you to get your prices for gold and silver off of these three websites. So I told it that, and it still muffed it. So, I'm not on the AI bandwagon that I mean, I think it's useful, but if you don't know the answer, and you type in something in AI, you might get a really spiffy sounding answer that's absolutely erroneous. And if you didn't know better, you could put that out on your blog and all of a sudden, put out a bunch of misinformation or whatever. I mean, I know my topic really well. So if I prompt it for something that want to dive deeper on or whatever, I pretty much know the answer in advance. But that's not true in all cases.
So we go down this road, continue down the road for this reset. The dollar will continue to be devalued. Then, in your view, the price of precious metals will continue to go up.
Yes.
And then, when I had Matt Smith on originally in February earlier this year, we were talking about how the goal would be from this administration for real wages to go up to
For
offset
wages
to
to
offset
go
the
up.
inflation. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's what you get in price push, cost push inflation. I mean, I lived through it because when I got out of school in 1975, I started working as a degree engineer with, every pilot rating you could get. And I had a $6 per hour job. That's what I signed the contract at. My very first paycheck was like $6.40 an hour. And being very naive and very on my tippy toes because I didn't want to lose my job and all this fear, I guess you could say, as a career employee at Rockwell International. I got my check and I took it to my boss. I said, "This is wrong. It says 640, and I signed up for six." And he started laughing. He says, "See this over here? It's a printout. I don't know if you've ever got a corporate paycheck or not, but and it said COLA, cola, like Coca-Cola." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, that's your cost of living adjustment. There was a cost of living adjustment that took place for the engineers, 2 months before you hired, and it just showed up on your check. So there's nothing wrong. That's why you got it." So the point I'm making is that you could keep increasing people's wages, but inflation continues to go up more and more. It's kind of a stair step. The wages go up, the prices go up, then wages go up, then prices go up, then wages go up. So you're chasing something that can't be caught. And that's what people don't understand. So, we got to make the right minimum wage. Well, the right minimum wage when I was working out of school was, I think, $2.75 an hour. Now, what's the correct minimum wage? I know it varies state to state. $15 an hour. 2.25 times what I got as out of school. So it shows you, of course, the depreciation of the dollar. Anyone watching you and I would know about that. But people that are naive think, no, you just set the wage right and everything's fine. Well, when do you set it right? Well, if you set it in silver, it'd be right. The minimum wage is whatever it is, X amount of ounces per hour or per day or per week. and they couldn't inflate it away.
But they well, that's the other thing too is they would never allow that, right? I mean,
Of course
because
not.
you know,
No, never.
I,
Yeah. They have a monopoly. It's a money monopoly run by people that run the Federal Reserve and the BIS and all the money center banks. Most of them are not Americans. They have no allegiance to the United States. And I'm talking about the shareholders, not necessarily the bankers themselves, such as Powell. Powell's maybe patriotic. I don't know. But these are internationalists. They're out there for the money power only, regardless of what nation state has what political power. They don't care as long as they print the money.
and they've pillaged everything.
Yeah, it's a parasite. They basically eat our labor. They get our labor basically for free. We have to produce our labor. We have to produce a product or work in a factory or a construction, whatever all these jobs are. But it's our labor that they can print basically or put digits on a computer for free, more or less, and we have to pay with our true labor. So it's basically a con game. But you know, for that to end doesn't happen that often in history. I mean, you can look at the French Revolution, you can look at, some protests, what happened in Weimar Republic, and on and on. But even when it quote unquote ends, what develops shortly thereafter isn't always better or more fair.
Well, and I was listening to a conversation with Daniela Camboni and Mitch Vexler, and he was I don't know if you've followed him at all, but he's breaking the story. It's not breaking now because it's been out for a little while, but the whole these school municipalities that have inflated the values of people's homes in order to increase their property taxes. I mean, these people have pillaged everything.
Yeah. Well, you get to a point in socialism where you don't have enough people that are producers to pay for everybody that's getting stuff for free. Now, a bureaucrat, and I don't want to get too far off in the weeds and make too many people angry. I mean, there's good and bad in all people. I want to kind of buffer this a little bit, but basically, a lot of these jobs are kind of make work jobs. And if you're on the take side rather than on the produce side, you can only take so much until the producers are unable to achieve the amount of cash flow that's required to keep the take side afloat. And that's when the whole system basically collapses. And we're pretty close.
Yeah, I was listening to Michael Burry talking about that. Michael Lewis said, "Did you hear that interview, Michael Burry?"
No, I didn't. I love both those guys. So I'll have to find it.
It's good. I'll send it to you. It's only 35 minutes long. And it ended with Michael Lewis asking him about the debt situation, and he said, Michael Burry gave a great analogy. He's like, trying to predict a collapse is like trying to predict when Castro's going to die. Yeah. Nobody knows. He goes, but the United States is still a primary country, hence the tariffs and what this administration is doing. So it tells you. I mean, it can go on for a while long, and these people are creative.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I wrote in the morning report, probably been about a year now, that this game could go on in almost indefinitely. Well, how would that happen? Well, really, what you need when you're using a debt-based monetary system is you need collateral, and that's just talk about revaluing gold. You can make gold the collateral behind the U.S. dollar, for an example, but better than that, I would say better from their perspective, certainly not mine, is to tokenize all the land mass that the federal government purportedly owns. So if you start putting a token on every blade of grass, every pine needle, pine tree, lake, rock, piece of ground, purported minerals under that ground and everything else, you all of a sudden could collateralize the debt much higher than it exists. At 38 trillion, okay, that's a big number. It can't be paid back. But yet, if you tokenized everything and reset the system on a tokenized blockchain, and said what the value of our resources are, I don't know, take that 38 and multiply by 10. Well, you could keep this, I'll call it a scam, going much, much longer.
Well, that's what they're attempting to do, right?
Absolutely. That's why I wrote the article in my editorial. Yeah.
and resetting the price, reevaluating the price of gold. Also, because and I always get this wrong, because then the Fed would have to cut the check to the Treasury, right? Is that how it goes?
That's my understanding. I mean, I've looked at it, it's a bit convoluted. I'd have to check with one of my guys, some people that I know quite well that probably know the exact details of the relationship between who owns the gold and who has the gold certificates and who's the owner of last resort. But I do believe it's supposedly the Treasury, yes.
I want to ask you about what happened Thanksgiving with the CME.
Yeah, that's a really good one. If you allow me to look over my other screen and get into my LinkedIn real
And take your
quick,
time.
um, because I don't know what happened, but what I do know is there were some pretty interesting ideas about what happened, and so this is a rumor. I will leave it at that because I'll state for the record I don't know what happened. But a couple people I know very well got it from a post. You can write anything, it doesn't have to be truthful, but this sort of fits. So, again, purportedly, what happened was there were 7,330 contracts. Silver crisis confirmed that the COMEX was faced as imminent. Systemic default, forcing an unprecedented intervention. The data strongly suggests that major participants engaged in an hours-long private negotiation on Thanksgiving Day, resulting in an untraceable 65 million cash settlement at a premium of $1.77 per ounce, paid by the shorts to the longs. So in other words, they took the spot price, sweetened it by $1.77, and cleared. This secretive non-delivery resolution successfully liquidated 6,816 contracts, with the cost borne primarily by the short collective, J.P. Morgan customers, Wells Fargo, and Citigroup, and the payment directed to the long collective, JPM customers and Deutsche Bank. The zero EFP, exchange for physical volume, on the final report stands as the ultimate dog that didn't bark, proof that the deal was entirely off the books and subject to strict non-disclosure. The move was a successful forced cash settlement, but only delayed the inevitable. The underlying problem of the physical drain continues, evidenced by the 13.4 million ounce move from registered to eligible. As the drain persists, odds of a force majeure are growing daily, suggesting the upcoming March delivery wave now looks massive and potentially unresolvable by private settlement alone. So again, I can't prove any of that, but it certainly is interesting to contemplate. And it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. But again, anyone can write anything on the internet. You just really, I've tried to verify that. I mean, first thing I do with stuff like that is try to get verification. And I've hit nothing to prove that that's true. Again, I'll repeat that it certainly makes sense. I mean, you don't pop a circuit breaker in a cooling system. Those things are triple redundant. I mean, I just don't buy that BS. Whether this is the background for it exactly or not, I don't know. I think the background was there was a problem. Is it these exact numbers I just read you? I do not know. But something along those lines probably were occurring, that somebody somewhere could not meet a demand, and they basically took a time out to rectify the problem.
So, well, in a data center, I mean, they have to have backup data
Oh,
centers.
they do. It's ridiculous to say that, this is, I mean, it's a lie. It's untrue.
What were your thoughts when you saw it happening?
Well, I've been, I'm pretty chided at this point in my life that, I just, most of what you hear from the mainstream press is propaganda to get you to think one way or the other. I mean, if you're liberal, you're going to be fed stuff that makes the right look like a bunch of morons, and that's kind of a one-off. That might be 1% of the right, but you're fed that constantly to reaffirm your thinking about the right. And if you're right, you're going to be fed a bunch of stuff from the left that's probably 1% that makes them look like they've lost their minds. So it's a feed mechanism from the AI, basically confirming people's bias and feeding that bias more and more. So I'm off track. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Oh, just what your initial thoughts were that
Yeah, it was so
Thanksgiving night.
fake. It was fake, phony, and false. Fake, phony, and false. It's absolutely a means for them to, again, use the word time out for 10 or 11 hours to figure out what we're going to do about this problem.
So, we're at the end of 2025 here, going into 2026. You know, what are your thoughts on what 2020 what's occurred this year and where we're at?
Well, we're at the final phase of a major inflationary experiment that usually ends in tears. And the way we know that is what I've said for so many times, and people kind of, took it or left it, and that's fine. But I constantly made the statement 90% of the move comes in the last 10% of the time. And we're in the acceleration phase right now, which means, this market started in 2000. We're 2025. It's gone up 11 straight years from 2000 to 2011. And we had a huge consolidation from 2011 until the last couple of years for gold. And now we're in that last phase. So if you take 10%, which is 2.5 years, and add that on to say 2024, that suggests 26 and a half or 27 and a half. Is that guaranteed? No. Is it precisely 10% and 90? No. But the idea is once you break free for both gold and silver, which they need to confirm each other, and they are acting as money and money alone. Yes, silver has 65% of its use industrially, but it's still acting as money. When they break free and they're well above their commodity price and they're moving at the rate that they're moving now, it tells you something is drastically wrong with the system as it stands, and something is going to either break or change in the not too distant future. There's no doubt in my mind. Exactly what that looks like, we've talked about probably going to be some blockchain based new monetary system. But, there is a problem. And I'm saying there's some probability. There's possibility that their powers that be are not able to implement their system as quickly or as easily as they intend. And that is the road to unintended consequences. I mean, there's nothing to say that the system wouldn't collapse or be untrusted without a immediate solution. Bank closure like in the 30s, but the bank closure in the 30s was for a few days, if I remember correctly. And that was very, very long. But what if this time there was a bank closure for 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Think what would happen then. I'm not saying that's going to happen. What I'm suggesting is that best laid plans of mice and men, from the book Mice and Men. They have these plans, but they don't really implement them the way they planned, or the market doesn't accept it. So that would be probably one of the worst cases. But the alternative to where everybody is basically marked, tracked, traced, and taxed at point of sale, and the money is programmable, that's probably the worst case I could think of. And that's the direction.
What group of people, in your view, will be most impacted by this in a negative way and a positive way? When I say group of people, I mean, boomers. I'm Gen X, Gen Z, millennials. I think I went out of order there. Is it Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, I think? But who will be impacted the worst from this?
Well, this is going to be a philosophical answer, Michael. I'd say the worst would be the working poor. Why I say that, if they get a UBI and it increases their lifestyle, then on an individual basis, they're better off. At least if you count lifestyle as being, more successful or more comfortable or more secure. However, it's the price of freedom. If you give up all of your freedom to be secure and get that universal basic income, philosophically, you're worse off because you really aren't free anymore. but that would go up the scale as well because what level. I mean, it's like asking the question, when are you a slave? If you're taxed at 50% of your gross income, are you one half slave? If you're taxed at 100%, does that make you a slave? If you're taxed at 10%, are you still a slave? And it's a rhetorical question. There isn't an exact answer, but you could be taxed at 100% and still be provided, health care, food, shelter, entertainment, and think that got a good life when you basically don't have much freedom at all. I mean, look at the 15-minute city situation. Look at the carbon tax proposal. I mean, there's stuff out there right now that shows you what the carbon credit is on certain foodstuffs. That exists right now. It's hard to find, but they're out there. So the direction they're moving is pretty clear. And, I used to think that some of this stuff was secretive and some of it is, but I have reached the conclusion over the last probably decade that whoever they are, I like to call them the money powers, are required to tell us what they're doing. They don't have to do it loudly. They don't have to be real specific, but they need to basically put it out there where at least someone that's diligent can find it. And maybe you might have to interpret it somewhat, but they usually put it in writing somewhere. I mean, look at the WEF website would tell us, or when I did the lecture on the new monetary system. I mean, that whole lecture was based pretty much on my fairly deep study on the BIS website, the Bank of International Settlements, and what they plan to do with the new monetary system. It's right there. They showed it to me, and then I lectured on it. So,
what's at the top of your mind right now? What's the heaviest thing weighing on you?
freedom, always. If we don't have freedom, then what good is it? If you got 1,000 Krugerrands and you can't buy what you want, go where you want, eat what you want, say what you want, then what good does the real money do you?
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier. I hate flying so much now. It's so much better
Mm-hmm.
to get in your car, and part of it is because you feel like you're a caged animal.
Yeah, I drove to Vegas this last time. I just thought, I wanted to see my sister in Reno, so that was part of the reasoning. But yeah, it's tough. Even on I agree. It's just become so dehumanized. I mean, really. And then you can't even joke. I mean, if you joke with the wrong TSA agent, you may have handcuffs on. It's ridiculous.
Have you ever considered, the years you've been doing this, leaving the United States?
I have a couple times, but when it got to the very end, I decided to stay in the States. One, I have two daughters here, and now a granddaughter. Secondly, I looked at it as objectively as possible and thought, if I really believe what I say, will I, stand my ground, so to speak, and fight to the bitter end? Hopefully not physically, just intellectually. And so I made my peace with that. And the last thing was thinking it through to the worst case scenario. If I was in Argentina or Mexico, I might be, the friendly guy that has, people working with me or for me, and everybody loves me. But as things get harder and harder, they may turn on you. I mean, if I'm in the States and I'm in any public setting, I got a pretty good inner knower of who's who I could trust or who I'd be leery of or who might be trying to scam me. But if I'm in a foreign country, I don't have that advantage. I could have someone that worked for me for 5 years and things get really tough. And all of a sudden that hacienda I put together growing food and, helping the communities taken over because, I don't deserve it. They do, kind of thing.
Well, and also, these government, any government, they could come in and,
Yeah.
I mean, not to say the United States couldn't do that either, but
There's a lot to consider. I've made peace with it. I'm going to stay here.
yeah. Where would you have gone though? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I liked Argentina when I was there. Colombia was pretty awesome. Mexico, I've had a place there for a while, and I like it. I've been there so many times, but to choose the one, it would have been Colombia because in Medellin, it's called the Eternal Spring. No one, no matter how rich you are, has a heater or an air conditioner. the whole year long temperature varies between like 68 and 72 degrees. It's like heaven on earth. People are super friendly. Lots of, backyard grown food. Very little attention paid to politics. So that might have been where I would have ended up.
Where can people find you?
TheMorganReport.com. There's links to our LinkedIn and our presence on YouTube, on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter. And then for those that don't know, the documentary's out, Silver Sunrise, free. Just go to silversunrise.tv. Watch the documentary. I'd encourage you to watch it, Michael. Maybe the next time that you connect, we can discuss it, because it goes through the fear, stress, and control the money powers have over our lives and what we can do about it.
That'd be great, and I'd love to. Maybe we'll circle back in January. God only knows what the state of things are going to be by then.
Yeah, we have $80 silver.
I enjoyed this. Thank you so much for doing this. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I look forward to. I'm sure it won't be that long before I'm pinging you and your assistant to set up another conversation.
Sounds great, Michael. Thank you.
Mic drop.